They came for senior developer interviews, 5 highly qualified candidates with perfect resumes and impressive credentials. I pretended to be a receptionist and caught job applicants mocking me. There's an old saying in business that you can tell everything you need to know about a person by how they treat someone who can do nothing for them. I'd heard it 100 times, repeated in leadership seminars and business books and motivational speeches. I'd nodded along, agreed wholeheartedly, and then promptly forgotten it in the daily chaos of running a company. That was before the receptionist test. Before I learned that the people who smile at power and kick at weakness are everywhere, dressed in their interview suits, carrying their polished resumes, ready to tell you everything you want to hear. Before I discovered that the most important interview question isn't on any application form. It's asked in the lobby, in the waiting room, in those unguarded moments when they think no one important is watching. My name is Alexandra Chen, and I'm the CEO of Novatech Solutions, a mid-sized software company that I built from nothing over 12 years. 12 years of early mornings, late nights, missed birthdays, and impossible decisions. 12 years of watching the company grow from just me and a laptop in my studio apartment to over 200 employees and a headquarters in the heart of the city. 12 years of learning, the hard way, that skills can be taught but character can't. It started with a conversation with my HR director, Marcus. He'd come into my office with that particular expression he gets when something is bothering him, a slight furrow between his brows, a tension in his jaw, and dropped a stack of resumes on my desk. "We're down to the final 5 for the senior developer position," he said. "All highly qualified. Great experience. Perfect references. Any of them could do the job." I looked at the stack, then back at him. "So what's the problem?" He hesitated, something he never does. Marcus is direct to the point of bluntness, which is why I hired him. I don't know how to explain it. There's something off about all of them. On paper, they're perfect. But in person, in the interviews. He shook his head. I can't put my finger on it. They say all the right things. They answer all the questions correctly. But it feels performative. Like they're reading from a script instead of being genuine. I understood what he meant. I'd felt it too, in other hires over the years. The candidates who aced every test, said every right thing, and then turned out to be nightmares once they were hired. The ones who talked teamwork but hoarded credit. Who praised collaboration but threw colleagues under the bus. Who smiled at me and snapped at assistants. We need a better way to screen for character, I said. Skills we can test. Experience we can verify. But personality, values, how they treat people, that's harder. Marcus nodded. I've been thinking about that. And I have an idea. It's unconventional. That's how I ended up sitting at the reception desk on a Tuesday morning, wearing a generic blouse and minimal makeup, my hair pulled back in a no-nonsense ponytail. The real receptionist, a wonderful woman named Diane who'd been with us for 6 years, was conveniently sick that day. I'd taken her place, armed with a visitor log, a phone system I barely understood, and a hidden earpiece through which Marcus could hear everything and offer moral support. This is insane, I muttered, adjusting the 2 small glasses I'd bought specifically for this purpose. They were fake, just clear lenses, but they completed the look. Mousy receptionist. Easily overlooked. Perfectly invisible. You're doing great, Marcus's voice crackled in my ear. First candidate is due in 10 minutes. Sarah Mitchell. 28, master's degree from a top university, for years at a competitor. High potential. High potential. I'd heard that phrase before. It usually meant someone with a great resume and questionable people skills. The doors slid open at exactly 9 a.m., and Sarah Mitchell walked in. She was polished in that particular way that screams money and privilege, designer handbag, perfectly tailored blazer, heels that probably cost more than Diane's weekly salary. She glanced around the lobby with barely concealed disdain, her eyes skipping over me like I was furniture. Hi there, I said, offering my warmest receptionist smile. You must be Sarah Mitchell for the 9 a.m. interview? She looked at me then, really looked, and I watched her assessment happen in real time. Young woman, plain clothes, no makeup to speak of, sitting at a reception desk. Invisible. Beneath notice. That's correct. Her voice was clipped, professional, but with an edge of impatience. I'm here for the senior developer position. Wonderful. If you could just sign in here, and I'll let Marcus in HR know you've arrived. I pushed the visitor log toward her. She picked up the pen, signed with a flourish, and then, instead of handing the pen back, she simply dropped it on the desk. Not placed. Dropped. It rolled toward the edge, and I had to grab it before it fell. Sorry, she said, but her tone made it clear she wasn't. She was already looking past me, toward the elevators, toward the future she clearly felt she deserved. It's fine, I said, still smiling. Can I get you some coffee or water while you wait? Coffee. Black. No sugar. She didn't say please. Didn't make eye contact. Just assumed I'd fetch and carry because that's what receptionists did. I made her the coffee, good coffee, from our fancy machine, and brought it to her. She took it without acknowledgement, already on her phone, scrolling through something with intense focus. I returned to my desk and waited. 2 minutes later, another candidate arrived. This one was a man, maybe early 30s, named David Chen, no relation. He was dressed in a suit that didn't quite fit, slightly too long in the sleeves, a little tight across the shoulders, and he carried a battered leather briefcase that had seen better decades. He approached the desk with a nervous smile. Hi, I'm David Chen. I have the 9:30? For the developer position? I returned his smile. Of course. If you could just sign in, please. He signed carefully, legibly, and then handed the pen back to me, directly into my hand, not dropped on the desk. Thank you, he said. I'm a little early. I hope that's okay. Absolutely. Can I get you some coffee or water while you wait? He hesitated. Coffee would be great, if it's not too much trouble. But only if you have a moment. I don't want to impose. It's no trouble at all. Thank you. That's really kind. He smiled again, genuine and warm, and I felt my estimation of him tick upward. Small things. Tiny courtesies. But they mattered. I made his coffee, cream, 2 sugars, he'd specified, and brought it to him. He'd taken a seat across from Sarah, who hadn't looked up from her phone once. He accepted the coffee with another thank you, and then, to my surprise, he spoke to her. Are you here for the developer position too? Sarah glanced up, annoyance flickering across her face. Yes. I'm David. Nice to meet you. She looked at his outstretched hand, at his too large suit, at his nervous smile, and made her assessment. Not good enough. Not worth her time. She gave him a tight, fake smile and said, Sarah, and then immediately returned to her phone, the dismissal clear. David's hand dropped. He sat back in his chair, a flush creeping up his neck, and stared at his coffee cup. In my ear, Marcus's voice, interesting. She just failed the first test, and she doesn't even know there is one. I kept my face neutral, my receptionist smile firmly in place. But inside, I was already learning something important. The interview hadn't even started, and I already knew more about these 2 candidates than any resume could tell me. The morning continued in fits and starts. Candidates arrived at 30-minute intervals, and I watched each one with the same careful attention. By noon, I'd seen 5 people, and the picture that emerged was both fascinating and deeply troubling. Sarah Mitchell, the first candidate, remained consistent in her approach. She treated me like a vending machine, someone to dispense coffee and directions, not a person worthy of acknowledgement. When she needed to use the restroom, she didn't ask, she demanded. Where's the bathroom? I need to freshen up before this interview. No please, no thank you, just expectation. I directed her, and she walked away without a word. The second candidate, David Chen, continued to be pleasant. He asked about my day, commented on the nice lobby, thanked me for the coffee refill I offered. When another candidate arrived, a woman named Patricia who was clearly nervous, clutching her portfolio like a lifeline, David noticed her anxiety and offered a reassuring smile. "You'll do great," he said quietly. "Just be yourself." Patricia's shoulders relaxed slightly, and she smiled back gratefully. But it was the third candidate who really opened my eyes. His name was Marcus Webb, same first name as my HR director, which made the situation ironic. He arrived 20 minutes late, didn't apologize, and immediately began complaining. About the traffic. About the parking situation. About the building's confusing layout. About how he'd had to circle for 15 minutes to find a spot. "That's frustrating," I said sympathetically. "I'm sorry you had trouble." He looked at me, really looked, for the first time, and his expression shifted from annoyance to something else. Assessment. Calculation. He was trying to figure out if I could be useful to him. "Is the interviewer running on time?" he asked. "Or am I going to have to wait because of their scheduling?" "Marcus in HR is ready for you. He just finished with the previous candidate. If you'll sign in, I'll let him know you're here." He signed, then leaned on my desk, invading my space. "Look, between us, what's the vibe here? Are they tough interviewers? Anything I should know?" I kept my expression pleasant but blank. "I'm sorry, I'm just reception. I don't really know much about the interview process." He waved a hand dismissively. Right. Of course." He straightened, looking around the lobby with the same assessing gaze. "Nice place, though. Must cost a fortune to rent. They must be doing well." It wasn't a question. It was a calculation, a measurement of whether this company was worth his time. I didn't offer coffee. He didn't ask. The fourth candidate, Patricia, the nervous one David had comforted, was a study in contrasts. She was clearly anxious, her hands trembled slightly as she signed in, but she was unfailingly polite. She asked how my morning was going. She apologized for being early. She thanked me for the water I offered. When she saw the used coffee cups from previous candidates, she gathered them and brought them to my desk. "Oh, you don't have to do that," I said, genuinely surprised. "It's nothing," she said with a small smile. "I used to work reception. I know how messy candidates can be." She hesitated, then added, "Good luck with the rest of your day. I hope the interviews aren't too stressful for you." For me. She hoped the interviews weren't too stressful for me. The receptionist. The invisible person at the front desk. In my ear, Marcus's voice was soft, "She just moved to the top of my list." The fifth and final candidate of the morning was a man named Robert Townsend. He arrived exactly on time, impeccably dressed, radiating confidence. He greeted me warmly, signed in without being asked, and then, instead of sitting, he leaned against the reception desk and started a conversation. "So, how long have you worked here?" he asked. "About 6 years," I said, which was technically true if you counted being CEO. 6 years. That's impressive. You must like it here." "I do. It's a good company." He nodded thoughtfully. "What do you like about it? If you don't mind me asking." I blinked, genuinely taken aback. In 6 years of being CEO, no job applicant had ever asked the receptionist what she liked about working here. "The people, mostly. Everyone's pretty great." "That's valuable to know." He smiled. "You can tell a lot about a company by how long people stay and whether they're happy. 6 years says something." He asked a few more questions, nothing invasive, just genuine curiosity about the company culture, the work environment, what the employees were like. He treated me like a source of information, but not in a manipulative way. More like he genuinely valued my perspective. When I offered coffee, he accepted with thanks, and when I brought it, he stood to take it from me rather than making me reach across the desk. Small courtesies. Unconscious ones. The kind that reveal character. By the time the morning ended, I had a clear picture. 2 candidates, David and Patricia and Robert, had treated me like a human being. 2 had treated me like furniture. And 1, Marcus Webb, had treated me like a potential tool to be used. I've seen enough, I told Marcus through the earpiece. Let's move to phase 2. Phase 2 was simple. The candidates who'd passed the lobby test, David, Patricia, and Robert, would be invited back for a second round. But before they left today, they'd each have one more interaction with the receptionist. One more chance to show who they really were. I waited until each interview concluded, watched them emerge from the elevator, and observed their behavior as they left. Sarah came out first, still on her phone, walking past my desk without a glance. She didn't say goodbye, didn't acknowledge me, just pushed through the doors and disappeared. David came out next, and he stopped at my desk. "Thanks again for the coffee," he said. "And for being so welcoming. It made the wait much nicer. Have a great day." Patricia stopped too, still nervous but visibly relieved. "Thank you for the water. And for being so kind. I hope I get to come back." She smiled shyly and left. Marcus Webb strode past without a word, already on his phone, probably complaining about the traffic again. And Robert stopped, smiled warmly, and said, "Thanks for the conversation earlier. It was really helpful. Hope the rest of your day is calm." He paused, then added, "Take care of yourself." After they'd all gone, I sat back in Diane's chair and let out a long breath. Marcus appeared from the elevator, a thick folder in his hands. "Well," he said. "That was illuminating. That's one word for it." I pulled off the fake glasses and rubbed my eyes. "Tell me about the interviews themselves. How did they do?" Marcus opened the folder. "Technically, they all did well. Sarah was polished, confident, answered every question perfectly. David was solid, maybe not as flashy, but his technical knowledge is deep. Patricia was nervous but sharp, she'll relax with experience. Marcus Webb was interesting. Very focused on compensation and advancement. Asked about the corner office, about stock options, about how fast he could expect promotion." He glanced at me. Robert was the standout. Technical skills are excellent, but more importantly, he asked thoughtful questions about team dynamics, company culture, long-term vision. He wants to build something, not just take a job. I nodded, unsurprised. The interviews had confirmed what the lobby had already shown me. "So what now?" Marcus asked. "Now we see how they handle the news." "What news?" I smiled. "The news that the receptionist they just met has a lot more power than they realized. But not yet. First, I want to see something." I pulled up the security footage from the lobby cameras and fast-forwarded to the waiting periods between candidates. I watched Sarah, glued to her phone, ignoring David's attempt at conversation. I watched David, offering reassurance to Patricia. I watched Marcus Webb, pacing impatiently, checking his watch, complaining loudly to someone on his phone about wasting time with bureaucracy. I watched Robert, sitting calmly, observing, then approaching my desk to ask those curious questions. And I watched Patricia, the nervous one, gathering used coffee cups and bringing them to my desk, wishing me a good day. "Send them all offer letters," I said. Marcus stared at me. "All of them? Even Sarah and Marcus Webb?" "Especially them. With different salary offers. Let's see how they respond." The offer letters went out that afternoon. 5 candidates, 5 different salary numbers, all within the range for the position but structured to reveal something about each person's priorities and character. Sarah received the highest offer, top of the range, generous benefits, the whole package. David received a solid mid-range offer. Patricia received the same. Marcus Webb received an offer that was slightly below market rate, with a note that there was room for negotiation based on experience. Robert received an offer that matched Sarah's, top of the range, but with a different structure, slightly lower base salary, higher performance bonuses, more equity. Within 24 hours, the responses started coming in. Sarah's response arrived first. She called Marcus directly, and I listened in from my office. "I received your offer," she said, her voice cool and professional. "I have to say, I was expecting something more competitive given my qualifications. I have offers from 2 other companies that are significantly higher." Marcus played it perfectly. "I understand. We believe our offer is fair based on market rates and your experience level. But we're always open to discussion." Discussion? There was an edge to her voice now. "I have a master's degree from a top program and 4 years at a competitor. I think I deserve more than discussion. We value your qualifications. But we also value cultural fit and team dynamics. We have to consider the whole package." A pause. Then, sharply, "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means we have multiple qualified candidates, and we're taking a holistic approach to this decision. Your technical skills are excellent. But we also consider how candidates interact with everyone in our organization, from leadership to support staff." Another pause, longer this time. When Sarah spoke again, her voice had shifted, uncertain now, defensive. "I don't understand. I was professional in my interview. I answered all the questions." "You were. And your interview performance was strong. But we also observe other moments. The waiting room, for example. The interactions with staff who aren't directly involved in hiring." The silence stretched. I could almost hear her running through the morning in her mind, trying to remember. Trying to figure out what she'd done wrong. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said finally, but her voice had lost its confidence. "We'll be in touch," Marcus said smoothly. "Thank you for your interest in Novatech." He hung up and looked at me through the glass wall of my office. I nodded. One down. Marcus Webb's response came via email, and it was exactly what I expected. He'd counteroffered aggressively, demanding a salary 30% higher than the one we'd proposed, plus a signing bonus, plus additional vacation days. The email was long, detailed, and entirely focused on what he wanted. Not a word about what he could contribute, what excited him about the role, what he hoped to build. I had Marcus send a polite rejection, citing that we'd decided to move in a different direction. Marcus Webb's response to that rejection was immediate and unprofessional, a furious email accusing us of wasting his time, questioning our company's integrity, and threatening to leave negative reviews on job sites. It was, in its own way, the perfect confirmation that we'd made the right choice. Patricia accepted her offer within hours. Her email was brief, grateful, and professional. She asked a few thoughtful questions about start dates and onboarding, and she mentioned that she was excited to join a team that clearly values its people. I smiled at that. She had no idea how right she was. David accepted as well, but with a twist. He called to accept, and during the conversation, he asked about the receptionist. "I don't know if this is appropriate," he said carefully, "but there was a woman at the front desk during my interview. Diane, I think? She was incredibly kind and made me feel welcome. I just wanted to say that if she's representative of the company culture, I'm even more excited to join." Marcus, who'd put the call on speaker for me, shot me a look of pure delight. "I'll be sure to pass that along to Diane. She'll appreciate it." "Please do. And thank you again for the opportunity. I won't let you down." Robert's response was the most interesting of all. He asked for a meeting. Not to negotiate, he said the offer was fair, but to discuss something else. Marcus scheduled it, and Robert came in the next day. I watched from my office as Robert entered the lobby. He approached the reception desk, where Diane was back in her usual spot, recovered from her illness, and greeted her warmly. They chatted for a moment, Robert smiling, Diane laughing at something he said. Then Diane gestured toward the elevator, and Robert headed up. Marcus met him in the conference room. I joined them a few minutes later, not as the receptionist, but as myself. Alexandra Chen, CEO. Robert's face when I walked in was a masterpiece of confusion and dawning realization. Robert, I'd like you to meet Alexander Chen, our CEO, Marcus said smoothly. Robert looked at me. Looked again. Recognition flickered in his eyes, the shape of my face, the color of my eyes, something familiar, but he couldn't place it. He extended his hand. Nice to meet you. I shook it, smiling. We've actually met before. Briefly. Yesterday morning. Confusion. Then, slowly, understanding. His eyes widened. The reception desk. You asked if I wanted coffee. We talked about the company. We did. You were testing us. It wasn't a question. He was already there, already putting the pieces together. I was. He sat back in his chair, a slow smile spreading across his face. That's actually brilliant. And terrifying. I had no idea. That was the point. I sat down across from him. I wanted to see how candidates would behave when they thought no one important was watching. How they'd treat someone they perceived as having no power, no influence, nothing to offer them. And I passed? You passed spectacularly. You treated Diane, that's our real receptionist, by the way, with respect and curiosity. You asked her questions because you genuinely wanted to understand the company. You didn't use her, you connected with her. That tells me everything I need to know about your character. Robert was quiet for a moment, processing. Then he asked, what about the others? The ones who didn't pass? I thought about Sarah, who'd dropped the pen and demanded coffee and walked past without a goodbye. About Marcus Webb, who'd complained and calculated and then exploded when he didn't get what he wanted. About the contrast between their polished interviews and their unguarded moments. Let's just say we have a much clearer picture of who would thrive here and who wouldn't. Robert nodded slowly. I have to admit, I'm glad I was myself. There were moments when I thought about just sitting quietly, keeping to myself. But I was genuinely curious about the company, and you, seemed like a nice person. It felt natural to talk. That's exactly the point, I said. The right behavior isn't performance. It's just who you are. He smiled. So when do I start? Robert started 3 weeks later. David and Patricia started the same week. The three of them joined our development team, and from day one, they were everything we'd hoped. David turned out to be not just technically solid but creatively brilliant, the kind of developer who sees solutions others miss. Patricia's nervousness faded within weeks as she found her footing, and her colleagues quickly discovered she was the person to go to when you needed a problem untangled. And Robert was a leader in the making. He mentored junior developers, collaborated across departments, and brought a level of emotional intelligence to the team that transformed how they worked together. But the story doesn't end there. Because the candidates who didn't get hired, they had their own reactions. And some of them were illuminating. Sarah called back 3 times after her rejection. The first call was to Marcus, and she'd clearly prepared. Her tone was conciliatory, professional, almost warm. I've been thinking about our conversation, she said. About the waiting room, about interactions with staff. And I realize I may have been distracted that morning. I had a lot on my mind. If I came across as dismissive or rude, I apologize. That's not who I am. Marcus was polite but firm. I appreciate that, Sarah. And I understand that interviews can be stressful. But we made our decision based on multiple factors, and we've filled the position. Is there any chance? I'm afraid not. But I wish you the best in your job search. She hung up. That should have been the end of it. But a week later, one of our junior developers mentioned in passing that a woman had been asking questions about the company on LinkedIn. Asking about the culture, about the interview process, about the receptionist situation. The developer, new and naive, had answered honestly, yes, the receptionist was lovely, yes, the culture was great, no, he hadn't heard anything unusual about interviews. I had Marcus reach out to Sarah directly. I heard you've been asking questions about our company, he said. Is there something we can help you with? Silence. Then, defensively, I'm just doing research. That's allowed, isn't it? It is. But I want to be direct with you. Your behavior during the interview process, including your treatment of our receptionist, was noted. Our decision was final. Continuing to investigate us won't change that. She hung up again. We haven't heard from her since. Marcus Webb's reaction was more public. He took to social media, LinkedIn, primarily, but also Twitter, and began posting reviews of our company. Not formal reviews on job sites, but vague, pointed comments about toxic interview processes and companies that waste candidates' time and hidden agendas that have nothing to do with qualifications. Most of it was vague enough to be deniable, but we knew what he was doing. A few of our employees saw the posts and mentioned them to HR. We considered responding, considered defending ourselves, but in the end, we decided silence was the better part of valor. People who knew Marcus would recognize his pattern. People who didn't, well, they'd form their own opinions. The most interesting reaction came from someone who wasn't even a candidate. A woman named Jennifer, who'd applied for a different position months earlier and been rejected, reached out to Marcus with a question. I heard about your receptionist test, she wrote. Is that true? Do you really evaluate candidates based on how they treat front desk staff? Marcus showed me the email. What do you want me to say? I thought about it. The truth. But carefully. So Marcus wrote back, we evaluate candidates based on many factors, including technical skills, experience, and cultural fit. Part of cultural fit is how candidates interact with everyone in our organization, regardless of their role. We believe that how a person treats someone who can do nothing for them reveals a lot about their character. Jennifer's response came quickly, that makes sense. I wish more companies did that. I've worked places where the culture was toxic because senior people treated support staff like they were invisible. It creates a terrible environment. We hired her for a different position 6 months later. She's been one of our best employees. Meanwhile, the 3 new hires, David, Patricia, and Robert, were thriving. David had become the team's unofficial creative director, generating ideas that led to 2 new product features within his first 4 months. Patricia had been promoted to team lead, her nervousness replaced by quiet confidence as she discovered her talent for bringing out the best in others. And Robert was already being groomed for management. He had that rare combination of technical skill and emotional intelligence that makes someone a natural leader. But the real reward came from an unexpected source. Diane, our actual receptionist, the one I'd pretended to be, came to my office one afternoon with a hesitant expression. Can I talk to you for a minute? She asked. Of course. Sit down. What's on your mind? She sat, twisting her hands in her lap. I heard about what you did. The receptionist test. Pretending to be me. I nodded. I hope you're not upset about that. I should have asked you first, but we needed it to be authentic. No, it's not that. She looked up, and her eyes were shiny. It's just, no one has ever done that before. At any company I've worked at. No one ever thought about how receptionists get treated. No one ever cared. I didn't know what to say. 20 years I've been doing this job, she continued. 20 years of sitting at front desks, greeting people, being invisible. And you know what I've learned? Most people don't see me. They see a function, not a person. They walk past like I'm furniture. They snap their fingers for coffee. They complain about wait times to my face like I'm not even there. Her voice trembled slightly. And then there are the ones who do see me. The ones who say please and thank you. The ones who ask how my day is going. The ones who remember my name. I've always known those were the good ones. But I never thought anyone in charge noticed. I reached across the desk and touched her hand. I notice, Diane. I've always noticed. She nodded, blinking back tears. I know that now. And it means more than you can imagine. It means I work somewhere that sees me. That sees all of us. And that's rare. That's really, really rare. After she left, I sat in my office for a long time, thinking about what she'd said. 20 years of being invisible. 20 years of watching people reveal themselves in small moments, and no one in power ever paying attention. The receptionist test wasn't just about finding good employees. It was about sending a message to every person in our company: you matter. How you're treated matters. And we're paying attention. It's been 2 years since the receptionist test. 2 years since I sat at Diane's desk in fake glasses and a plain blouse, watching candidates reveal their true selves before the interviews even began. The test has become part of our company lore now. New hires hear about it during orientation, not as a threat, but as a statement of values. This is who we are, we tell them. This is what we believe. How you treat people matters. How you treat the people who can do nothing for you matters most of all. We've refined the process over time. It's not a secret anymore, word got out, as it always does, but that's okay. Now candidates come in knowing they might be observed, and that knowledge itself becomes a filter. The ones who resent it, who feel it's an invasion or a trick, usually withdraw their applications. The ones who appreciate it, who understand why it matters, those are the ones we want. David, Patricia, and Robert are all still with us. David is now our head of product innovation, responsible for the features that have doubled our revenue in the past 18 months. Patricia runs her own department, a team of 20 developers who adore her, and she's become one of our most respected leaders. And Robert is my protégé. He's being groomed for executive leadership, and I have no doubt he'll be running his own division within 5 years. But the success stories aren't just about them. They're about the culture we've built. The message we've sent. The example we've set. Other companies have heard about our test. Some have adopted similar approaches. I've given talks at industry conferences about the importance of character screening, about the value of observing candidates in unguarded moments, about the way small behaviors predict big outcomes. The response is always the same: nods of recognition, questions about implementation, and a lingering discomfort from those who realize they might not pass such a test themselves. Because here's the truth that the receptionist test revealed: a lot of people are kind to power and cruel to weakness. A lot of people perform respect for those who can help them and withhold it from those who can't. And those people, no matter how skilled, no matter how qualified, no matter how brilliant, will eventually poison any organization they join. I learned that lesson the hard way, through years of hiring mistakes. Years of bringing in talented people who looked great on paper and then watching them destroy teams, demoralize colleagues, and create cultures of fear and competition. Years of wondering why the brilliant hire wasn't working out, why the team was struggling, why turnover was high despite our best efforts. The answer was always there, sitting at the front desk. Waiting to be seen. Sarah Mitchell, the first candidate, the polished one with the designer handbag and the dismissive attitude, I checked on her recently. She's changed jobs 4 times in 2 years. 4 companies, each one a fresh start, each one ending the same way. The pattern is clear: brilliant on paper, toxic in person. She's still looking for the right fit, still blaming everyone else, still unable to see that the common denominator is herself. Marcus Webb took a job at a competitor. He lasted 8 months. I heard through industry gossip that he was fired after multiple complaints from colleagues about his behavior. He's now working as an independent contractor, which apparently suits him better. There's no one to report to, no team to poison, no receptionists to ignore. The others, the ones who passed, the ones who didn't, they've scattered across the industry. Some have thrived. Some have continued their patterns. But the lesson remains: character isn't something you can fake forever. Eventually, who you are becomes visible to everyone. Diane still works at our front desk. She's been with us for 8 years now, and she's become something of a legend herself. New employees are told, half-jokingly, to be nice to Diane because she might be the CEO in disguise. Diane plays along, offering cryptic smiles to nervous candidates, enjoying her small role in our ongoing commitment to finding good people. Last month, she came to my office with a request. "I want to be part of the interviews officially," she said. "Not as a test, but as an actual interviewer. I've been watching people walk through that door for 8 years. I know things about candidates within 30 seconds that most interviewers never figure out. I want to use that." I didn't hesitate. Done. Now Diane sits on every interview panel for every position in our company. She has equal say in every hiring decision. She asks the questions that no one else thinks to ask. How do you treat people who can't help you? How do you respond when you're frustrated? How do you behave when you think no one important is watching? Her insights have been invaluable. She spots the fakers instantly, the ones who perform kindness for the interviewers and then ignore her on the way out. She identifies the genuinely good ones, the ones who treat her like a person regardless of her role. She's become our secret weapon, our character compass, our guarantee that we're hiring people who share our values. And that, I've realized, is the real legacy of the receptionist test. It's not about tricking candidates or catching them off guard. It's about recognizing that every interaction matters, every person matters, and the way we treat the most invisible among us reveals who we really are. The title of this story is The Receptionist Test, but that's not quite accurate. It was never really a test. It was a reminder. A reminder to myself, to my company, to everyone who walks through our doors, that character isn't something you demonstrate in interviews. It's something you live every moment, in every interaction, with every person. The woman at the front desk isn't invisible. She's the most important person in the building. Because she sees what everyone else misses. She knows what everyone else forgets. And if you're smart, if you're really smart, you'll treat her like the CEO. Because one day, she might be. I think about that Tuesday morning sometimes. About the 5 candidates who walked through our doors, each one carrying a resume, each one hoping to impress. They had no idea that the most important interview wasn't with Marcus or with me. It was with the woman at the front desk, the one they could barely see, the one who asked for nothing and noticed everything. 3 of them passed. 2 of them failed. And all of them learned something about themselves that day, whether they realized it or not. The ones who passed, David, Patricia, Robert, they learned that who they are when no one's watching is exactly who they should be. They learned that kindness isn't performance, it's practice. They learned that the person who can do nothing for you today might be the person who can do everything for you tomorrow. The ones who failed, Sarah, Marcus, they learned something too, though I doubt they'd put it this way. They learned that the world is watching, even when they think it's not. They learned that their patterns are visible, their habits are telling, their true selves are always showing. I don't know if they'll change. People can, sometimes. People do, occasionally. But it has to come from inside. It has to be real. That's the lesson of the receptionist test. Real is the only thing that works. Real is the only thing that lasts. And real shows up in the smallest moments, in the please and thank you, in the coffee cups gathered and returned, in the genuine curiosity about a stranger's day. The next time you walk into a lobby, take a moment. Look at the person behind the desk. Really look. Say hello. Ask how they're doing. Mean it. Because you never know who's watching. And more importantly, you never know who you're becoming. Which side of that story were you on? Let me know in the comments. And if you love diving into these Reddit rabbit holes with me, subscribe to Reddit Be Mine. We're building the best storytelling community on YouTube, and we'd love to have you. Click that sub button and stay tuned.